Today, I would just like to take a few moments of your very valuable time and share a few thoughts with you on educating our children. You see, the most important asset that we as a family, we as a church, a community, a country has in this world is truly our children. You see, from the very beginning of time, God gave us a very valuable and precious gift when He created us in His own image and likeness. And He sent man out from the Garden of Eden, and He told him to go and multiply. Go out and create a family. Create children within that family. And see, and once we produce our offsprings, we have an obligation to them to give them the education they need in order to be able to survive in the world that they are now have to live in. And that responsibility begins with each one of us as parents, as grandparents, as a church, as a community, as a nation, and as Christians. We have to look upon our offspring, which are our children, as the future and the continuation of what God has given us from the very beginning. And in order for us to get there, the children have to be educated. And today we realize that we are living in an economy that is not providing the quality education for our children. Our children have the highest dropout rate in the nation at any point in time. And that is not a good position to be in when they are having to compete in a world economy, when other nations are educating their children at a much higher rate than we are. So it all comes back to, how are we going to live as a nation, as a community, as Christians, and not being able to provide the type of education that our children will need to continue the offspring where God gave us from the very beginning of time. We look at ourselves in the mirror and we say that there's a problem out there. Well, that problem is right here at the person that you're looking at in the mirror. When you must say to yourself, what am I going to do to make sure that my children have the best education possible. And let me give you an example of that with my parents. You see, my mother and father were married at a very young age. And at the time they were married, neither one had an education. My father didn't even finish the first grade. And I asked him many years later why. He told me that he didn't like school. His father was a farmer, and all he wanted to do was follow his father around in the fields doing what his father was doing. My mother went to school until she was in the 6th grade, and she quit school to marry my father and join him on the farm as a sharecropper. A year after they were married, I was born. I'm the first child of 8 children that was born into that marriage. So after I started to school and I got up to probably around the 5th or 6th grade, I said to my mother one day that I'm tired of school. I'm going to quit. So my mother brought me in and sit me down and she said, "Look, son," she said, "neither your father nor I have received an education. And both of us agreed that when we had children, our children were going to go to school and were going to get a quality education." And she further said that her job as a wife and as a mother was to raise her children. My father was the breadwinner for the family. And her job to not only raise but educate his children, their children together. And so at this particular time in life, there is about 3 or 4 of us. And so here it is, I'm talking about quitting school, and they've already made the pact that there was not going to be any such thing as their children quitting school and be a dropout. They were going to get at least an high school education. And we lived in a very tight-knit community where it was basically family and friends. Everybody knew everybody. And everybody in the community basically had the responsibility of helping to look out for each other kids and making sure that they were at school getting the education while the parents were working and doing what they needed to do to provide for that family. And so as I would bring homework home from school and sit there in the afternoons to be able to do my homework, my mother would sit down at the table beside me and she would make sure that I am working on what I had been given to as an assignment. And let's just say, for example, a math assignment. I would do the problems while she sit there and looked at the newspaper or whatever, but she was making sure that I was going to do my homework in a timely manner, and then she was going to help my other brother to get his, and so forth and so on. So as I would finish my work for the evening, I would pass my paper over to my mother, and my mother would look at the paper, and she would go down through it just like my teacher would be in terms of making the corrections on the paper. But the difference would be that my mother would not mark the paper. She would just go as though she's correcting and everything else. And then when she would finish with it, she would hand the paper back to me and she would say, "Son, this is incorrect." And I said, "Mom, what's incorrect?" She says, "You take it, examine it, and you will find out what's wrong on the paper." I said, "Okay." I go back over it, see what's what. I may find one, maybe two problems that were incorrect at the time. And then I would hand it back to my mother. And she would once again examine it, look at it. And she says, "This is still wrong." I said, "Mom, I made the corrections that I saw was wrong." She says, "Do it over." Okay, at this point in time, I can feel myself getting angry as a kid would get. But I never talked back to my mom or my dad, even as a kid, and even today. My dad is 94 years old, and I still do not talk back to my father, as my other younger brothers and sisters did as they grew up and as I see kids do today. So I took the paper and went back through it and made the corrections or whatnot, and I did find another problem or two wrong. Gave it back to my mom. She looked at it this time. She says, "Okay, you can go to bed now." All right, I take the paper and put it in my folder and head out to bed. The next day I go to school, and most of the things are right on my paper, but always it would seem to be one or two that were still wrong. So the point is that my mother made me do what she felt that I knew how to do on my own. And what I did not know until many years later was that my mom did not understand the work that I was doing. She says, "I didn't know nothing about those fractions and those algebra and the geometry. I never had that in school." And so here I am thinking that what my mom was telling me at that time to do was based on her knowing that the problems were incorrect. But basically what my mother said is that she was challenging me because she knew that I could get the problems right if I took my time and dealt with them properly. So she was pushing me to do what she knew that I could do. And if she had never pushed me, I would have never been able to do what I did correctly. So I say to my children and other parents and their children is, push your children just a little bit harder. Show them with love what they can do if they're given the right opportunities. It's all up to each one of us to examine our position and be able to transform our thinking from the old way of doing things until a better way of doing things. Learn to believe in your children. And we as a community have to be able to look out for our children as they walk and ride their cycles or drive their cars through our communities learn to look out for one another so that they don't get involved into gangs and drugs and other people bring harm to them. This is the way that the people in my community when I was growing up looked out after me and helped me to be able to grow to the man that I am today. And we as Christians, as churches, we have to be able to take a greater responsibility with our young people and teaching them and training them. The Bible says in Matthew 28, 19 and 20, "Go ye therefore into the world and teach." You see, that is an obligation of the church to start in your local communities and send out those disciples that you have in your churches. All of your Bible teachers, send them into the homes of the community. Send them into the schools to be able to sit down and help a young child read, write. Use the tools that God has given to each one of you to make a difference in some child's life. We all can do that. And we all have to stop sitting back and saying, well, you know, the school system is not educating my children properly. The government is not putting the money into the schools to provide for the education. All of these things begin at home. And once we begin to get totally involved with our children's lives, we can make a difference in that community, in that local school board. And those local school boards lead to the county schools, and the county to the state, and the state to the federal. We can make that transition if we all become involved with our children in our communities. And those are just some of the thoughts I wanted to share with you today. And if each one of you learn to be able to share your thoughts and help out in some way, we all will be better off, and we will have a community of productive children. Thank you so very much.